Hello and welcome to Talking Pictures TV. I'm Robert Ross and I'm joined by Liz Fraser herself.
Hello. Hello, Brody.
Very exciting.
My dog here.
Let's take it back to when you first got into acting. What was your inspiration to become an actor?
I just always wanted to act. When I was at school, we used to do productions, and then I belonged to a youth club and we did productions, and then I decided that I needed training, so I went for a scholarship. So I didn't have to pay, and that was for 2 years. So I won the scholarship, and that was at the London School of Dramatic Art. And after 2 years, I was ready to fling myself into the business. Ealing
Studios was your first experience of filmmaking, a film called Touch and Go.
I was in this film Touch and Go, and it was my first film, and it was one day, and it was called The Girl on the Bridge. And someone loses a cat, and we're a whole crowd around, and we're all looking over because the cat now is on a part of the wall. And I didn't want to tell my mother that I was getting £10 for the day, but I did say I was all right because I used to give my mum a lot of money. But things kept going wrong, and we did 10 days, and I made £100, which I kept absolutely quiet because it was so. If I told my brother then that I'd got £100, you know, but it was enormous.
You weren't born Liz Fraser, though. What was your birth name?
Well, I was sort of born.
You were born, yeah, but not Liz Fraser.
But not Liz Fraser.
Yeah.
No, I was born and christened by my maiden name, which was Elizabeth, and my mother's name, or my father's name, was Winch, W-I-N-C-H. I'm sure this is really interesting.
It is to me.
For all the Winches in the world.
So where did Fraser come from then?
I don't know. I was in some production and someone said, oh, that's a dreadful name. I think we were all about 16 or 17. And I think there was a biscuit or something. He said, like Huntley and Palmer. Thank God I didn't have the Palmer or the Huntley, but he said, that's quite a nice name. Fraser. So someone invented that, but I think there were a biscuit or something around. Fraser biscuits.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was named after Fraser biscuits. And then it was abbreviated from Elizabeth Fraser to Liz Fraser when I did I'm All Right, Jack.
So how did you get the role in I'm All Right, Jack?
That was amazing because I used to go around all the agents. I was doing television and I did stage, but I hadn't made any films. And I would go around to the agents and say, you know, is there a part in films? Is there a part in films? And this one agent, his name was Sonny Zal, who was very nice. He eventually committed suicide by chucking himself out of a window, but it's irrelevant, really. Just one of those little passing bits of information. Anyway, he said to me, there are no women in films. They're all about soldiers and everything, no women's parts. And then I had a phone call from a studio, somebody called Phil Shipway, and said, we've been recommended you to come along to do an audition for The Girl in I'm All Right, Jack. And I said, I don't understand. He said, for you to come, I said, no, what do you mean? He said, yes, for goodness sake, I'm talking to you. I'm saying, would you like to come along and do an audition for... So I had to work out how to get to Shepperton Studios, and I caught a bus, and I caught a train and a tube, and then I had to walk quite a long time. So I get to these studios, and it was just before their lunch, and somebody said to John Bolting, he said, oh, this is the girl who's come to audition for the girl of Cynthia Kite in I'm All Right, Jack. And he looked at me and he said, she's not at all right. And I said, I've caught a bus, and I've walked, and I caught a train, and I've spent the whole afternoon getting here. I said, that's not fair. So he said, well, all right, make her up, put something on her hair, and I'll see her after lunch. So the makeup people were absolutely wonderful. They put this beautiful wig on, which I wore in the film eventually, and the makeup. And I do the audition, and with Phil Shipway, who was the manager of the studios, because by that time Ian Carmichael had been and gone, so all the others who'd worked with an actor, I'm left now working with the studio director. So anyway, we do the little audition part, and I went back home, and then I had the phone call from Sonny Zal, and he said, you've got the part in I'm All Right. I said, I don't understand what you mean. He said, you went for the part. Yes, we've got it. No, I don't think so. And he said, yes, you've got the part in I'm All Right, Jack. And that was my first film. And I got £50 a week, 50, and a chauffeur-driven car, which made up for the £50. And I did it for 7 weeks. And I met all those wonderful people in I'm All Right, Jack. All the ones that you loved and thought, gosh.
You had Terry Thomas and Dennis Price and obviously Peter Sellers.
Oh,
but Margaret Rutherford was a big hero of yours, wasn't she?
Oh, yes. I mean, it was so unbelievable to be with all these people that you've just seen on film. Margaret Rutherford, of course. Irene I had worked with on the stage, so I knew Irene. Peter I had met. But Terry Thomas I'd never met, and he used to do a stage show on his own, and he'd been absolutely brilliant. Peter was very susceptible to clairvoyance, and Maurice Woodruff was a very good clairvoyant in those days, and everything that he said Peter should do, he did. He was really influenced by this clairvoyant. And so people would say to the clairvoyant, do tell Peter that he's going to be doing a film, like for instance with someone called BB in it, and it was Bridget Bardot, but they sneaked into this clairvoyant, and so I did an equally awful thing. I persuaded my husband, this is personal now, I persuaded my husband to go and to see the clairvoyant, and it was being a bit rocky at that time, and I said to Maurice, can you tell him something? It's really good. And so Maurice said, yes, I will. And Bill came around and he said, actually, he said, things are wonderful. He said, he described you and he said, you know, we're going to be so great together. And I said, oh, I think that's wonderful. Thank you, Maurice.
Cheeky, good.
So when I did I'm All Right, Jack, they were nice enough, the Bolting brothers, to phone up Basil Dearden and say, look, we've got a girl here and we hear you're looking for someone in your next film, and she'd be very good, which is fantastic. So I came straight away from doing I'm All Right, Jack into Desert Mice. And there were people that I knew very well because of all the television I'd done, like with Sid James, who we got on so well together and I loved him to bits. But there was Sid and there was Dora, and we all knew each other. And quite a funny little story there. So it was Dick Bentley. I can't remember the whole cast, but there were about 6 of us. Dick Bentley had never filmed before and or done television because he'd always been doing radio with June Whitfield, who's a great friend of mine. And we were told that we heard on that last day that the film crew were told by Basil Dearden, we're going to work a long time tonight. So all be prepared that we're going to stay for a long time. And Sid said, well, no one's told us that. And then Alfred said, well, no one's even asked. So we chose Dick Bentley, which was so unfair, to go up and to say to Basil Dearden, look, you know, you haven't asked any of us if we want to work for a long time. And am I allowed to swear? Well, I won't swear. But let's pretend it was a swear word. So Dick Bentley said, you didn't ask us at all. And he said, naff off. And then he comes back to me and he said, F off. And we all went, what? And then we didn't want to do it. So it was quite a furore at the end of the film, but it was quite amusing. Dora Bryan was fantastic, incidentally, and a great friend of mine, and I think the best actress, comedy actress that we've ever had.
You worked on stage with her quite a lot, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I did. One little funny story with working on stage with Dora, we had this scene together, and at the end of the scene, this is live plays going out, and she said, do you know, on that scene there, I want you to come down where I light the cigarette. I want you to come down a bit. So I said, oh, okay. So the next night, she's lighting the cigarette, and I sort of moved down, so I'm a bit lower down on the stage, and she lit the cigarette, and then the next night I went further down, and she said, no, I meant down, down. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, just lower. Because I was too tall to light her cigarette. But by the time we'd finished, I was virtually in the orchestra pit when she said down. But Dora was so funny, and she really was. Very, very good comedian, great friend.
But before even films, you were doing a lot of live television, weren't you, with Tony Hancock and Benny Hill?
I did. An enormous amount of television, which was really at the beginning of television being really popular. It's amazing, actually. And there'd be someone with a box, they called it a box. So if you forgot your words, they could do what they called a cut key. Do you know this? I'm talking to someone who's an expert sitting in front. Well, they had a cut key, so they would turn off the sound, so somebody could say, your next line is, now you open the window, and then they'd put it on and I'd say, oh, well, now you open the window. But it was wonderful, really, because a lot of people were forgetting lines. These days, they don't do a continuous show, generally, and people don't forget their lines. But there was this safety, and it was called a safety key, and that was it. They would just cut off the sound. You'd get the loud prompt. I didn't do it very often, I might say. I was really quite good, but on the other hand, I didn't have that many lines in those days, you know. I think my first line was with Sid and Tony on a dance floor, and I'm dancing with Sid, and I kick him, and I say, well, who are you kicking, you great lump, and kick him or something. Anyway, that was my first line on television. And from there on in, I've had several lines since.
Quite a lot. Wasn't there a Hancock episode with Irene Handel, with a dog that bit Sid at some point?
Yes, Irene Handel, who I toured with. I knew and liked her a lot. The biggest joker of anyone I've ever met. She would invent things and pull people's legs, I might tell you one. But anyway, Irene was that, and she had this little dog, and she's talking to Sid. And it was live, it all went out live then, and the dog bit Sid's finger. And he really wanted to swear, but he cussed that bloody dog afterwards. He could have killed the thing. Anyway, that was my first experience with the Hancock films. I was in virtually all the Tony Hancock series, and him and Sid, and the three of us really became close friends. He was very introverted, Tony Hancock. Didn't like speaking to strangers. So if he knew you, then we would be going out and no one else was supposed to look. So I was very close to him, Tony, and Sid. My favourite two people, really. I mean, I really loved him. He was fantastic. Yeah.
But you worked with Sid a lot, and it does come across on the screen how much you loved each other. It's a really good chemistry.
We were
there.
in Citizen James. I was his girlfriend in Citizen James. I think there were 2 series of that.
There were 3, but you did episode. Well, you did the first series with Bill Kerr as well as
that's
Sid.
right.
And there's been many thousands of words written about the Sid and Tony Hancock relationship. But you 3 were very close friends in those days. I mean, you didn't see any antagonism between Sid and Hancock, did you at all?
No, there was none at all. No. None at all. And then it just happened in the end that I think Tony did a couple of things on his own without Sid, and that did upset Sid, did upset him. I remember sitting in a cinema, or like we are now, and he said, you know, I'm very hurt. And there was interesting because Tony, and I did get the 2 of them I knew very well, but Tony said, we're a double act. And I said, no, you're not a double act. He said, yes, we are. He said, I'm not an individual anymore. I'm a double act. And he told Duncan Wood, who was the director, that he didn't want to be with Sid anymore. And so Sid was absolutely devastated and took it personally. And then Tony did several films on his own. I've forgotten what they were, but I think I was in a double.
You did the one with the Rebel, didn't you?
Oh, thank you for telling me that. Which one was that?
The Rebel.
Oh, I did the Rebel. Yeah. I did the Rebel.
It's a good film.
Right. And Tony wanted me as a mascot, you know, and so that's right. And we were in a coffee place, and say, what do you want? And he says, no, what did he say?
No froth.
No froth. He says, I want a coffee and no froth. No froth? No, you don't want any froth? No froth? Because that was the days they just started these machines where everything had froth. And I'd go up and say, you want one coffee but no froth? And who was the one behind the counter?
Mario Fabrizzi.
Mario Fabrizzi would say, no froth? That went on for about 10 minutes. And I was doing something else at the time, so I was doing another film, and Tony looked upon me as a mascot. So I went across from that studio. I think I was doing Desert Mice or something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But I went on...
Actually, no, you were doing double bunk.
I was doing
with
double
Sid,
bunk.
and then
with
you were,
Sid, that's
you were
right.
moonlighting between the two.
That's right. I'm so enjoying having a chat with you.
Well, me too, me too. So double bunk is my personal favourite of all your films.
I would say that's pretty high up for me as well. Again, it was the people who was in it. It was Sid again. Mm-hmm. You'll gather that I worked with him a lot and we had great rapport.
Obviously, the other couple in this is Jeanette Scott and Ian Carmichael. Were they... Because you knew Ian obviously from I'm Alright Jack before, but had you worked with Jeanette Scott before?
No, I've not worked with her. What a very nice person. But she stopped being an actress. Whether or not that film finished her off, I don't know. But she became, not a mayor, but some councillor in a village. And of course she was, whose daughter?
Thora Hurd's daughter.
Thora Hurd's daughter. Again, not all films are cast with people that you think are wonderful. But again, we've spoken about ones where there were really nice people.
But this cast, you've got Terry Scott, Norton Wayne, Arthur Mullard again, Irene Handel again, all the great faces of British film, really. So.
And there was a song that Sid and I sang, and I can't get a copy of it, but it went, "We got a double bunk, double bunk. We had a lot of trouble with that double bunk. But something da-da-dee will happen anyway. We had a lot of junk in our double bunk. Ooh, double. I've forgotten the lyrics, obviously. But we sang this duet.
Yeah, that was released as a single, wasn't it? That was actually released.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a copy of that if you want.
But without doubt, I loved Sid.
We ran a competition at the channel to ask Liz, from all you millions of viewers out there, a question. And the winner was somebody called Alison Thompson. So hello, Alison, if you're watching, I hope you are. And the question to ask you, Alison, Liz, was if Liz could go back to live making a film, which one would she pick?
Well, I'd certainly like to be alive. I mean, if I lived, would I go back to making a film? Am I alive now?
You're still alive, yeah.
It's not from the grave.
This is not 2046.
Which film would I like to go back to doing?
To redo, I suppose, yeah.
I suppose I'm Alright Jack, because that was my first film. I met everybody, these big stars, you know, meeting people that you admire and like, and I was so privileged to be in that. And I would say that was the happiest time in my theatrical life, or my life. It was just like being in fairyland. It was wonderful. And apart from when I have interviews with you, I can't think of anything better.
There you go.